To this story now, storms have once again wreaked havoc on electricity infrastructure in Johannesburg. There have been multiple outages, with Roodepoort particularly baddest hit. City Power has received almost 2,000 calls since yesterday. Several trees were uprooted, damaging infrastructure. For an update, we're now joined by City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena. Mr. Mangena, good morning and thank you very much for your time. We understand that you actually dispatched teams to attend to the multiple power outages in the city last night already. Which areas are most affected?
Thanks for having us and good morning to the viewers at home. Yes, we are still in a crisis mode as City Power. Last night we had small areas that were battered by the hailstorms, especially in the areas west of Johannesburg, including Roodepoort, and we have been basically pumping in resources, maximum resources in those areas. Our CEO, Ms. Tifula Ramashava, is actually on her way to Roodepoort, if not there already, to basically ensure that there is sufficient response to some of the work that we are supposed to do there. Most of the customers in those areas do not have electricity because of the hailstorms yesterday. And you'll remember this happens as we were basically recovering from the thunderstorms and the flooding that happened in the past 2 weeks. So we always find ourselves in a back foot, and we are chasing a moving target in terms of dealing with the backlogs here.
Oh, all right. So you were still looking to attend to that backlog when this hit?
Yes, indeed. We basically still having teams on the ground that were basically dealing with the backlogs, but we had basically moved the needle in some of the areas that we were affected. You'll remember that last week we were basically sitting on hovering around 5,000 calls, outage calls from customers, but we opened this week with about 2,000 because of the extra work that we basically put in the areas such as Roodepoort and even Lenasia and Hestiel areas. But obviously with the weather gods thinking differently, we were basically affected yesterday when we had this, our infrastructure got affected. Trees fell on top of our overhead lines. We are basically working with the city parks to basically ensure that we remove most of those in the areas such as Emarangia. We've got trees that have fallen on our poles, on our lines, and also even Roodepoort, where as I mentioned, CEO and even the executive mayor will be there today, later today, to ensure that they basically see and lead the recovery and ensure that power is restored and other services.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe you have enough capacity to deal with this time you sleep?
Look, we do have capacity, but obviously we don't have unlimited pockets. Obviously, most of the resources that we had are starting to get depleted because of most of these things we were not really ready for. And we are talking about natural disasters here, which, as you know, the mayor has actually written to the provincial and national government to declare a state of disaster so that we can be able to get extra resources pumped into our recovery efforts across all the entities of the city of Johannesburg, so that we can be able to deal with this. It's not only electricity, it's roads that have been flooded, it's also water services that are also affected. You've got water pipes that are exposed. You've got houses that have been flooded in most areas, in the Lenasia area, in Roodepoort area, and even in Alexandra. So it's basically that which basically informed the executive mayor to basically write to request for the state of disaster, so that we can basically be able to tap into some of the disaster funds that are available out there, so that we can deal with this. As City Power, we're sitting at a bill of about 42 million rands currently, and we believe that will increase as we start to unravel some of the damage caused in the coming days. But you'll remember that we're also still dealing with the problem of load shedding. We're sitting at stage 6, which is the highest levels of load shedding, which really is not really helping us in terms of our recovery efforts, in terms of the work that we're supposed to do. on an ordinary basis, on the ordinary day of load shedding, we're losing about 3.6 million daily. So you can add the natural disasters that we are suffering to that, and it's really stretching. Our guys are fatigued. Most of the guys we have to recall from leave. So it's really basically pushing some of our resources to the limit.
No, it's a serious crisis, but these rains aren't relenting. So is there perhaps another team that's putting together a plan, a comprehensive plan, to better prepare for more destructive rains?
Yes, indeed. We are basically, obviously, this opened our eyes as well to basically plan better in terms of how to respond to this kind of eventualities along the executive at the city of Johannesburg, which is also really assisting, especially the office of the MNC of EISD, in terms of our plans to recover from some of these problems that we're facing. But also as City Power, we're obviously starting to move some of the resources from different areas to ensure that we basically deal and target those areas that are hardest hit by the floods and also the load shedding as it is. We are focusing on Rudeport currently because of that's where we are still struggling in terms of stabilizing and normalizing the network in that area. We have brought in resources this morning. Even last week, the reason why we managed to deal with some of the outage calls is because even last week we managed to basically bring resources from other depots across our 8 depots to basically ensure that we put the resources, operators, technicians into the depot so that we can deal with some of those areas. But also the reprieve that we got from ESCOM really assisted us a lot in terms of trying to deal with the backlog that we had. And some of that is basically bearing fruits currently because of in most of the areas that we had problems, challenges, we are basically at least breathing and doing well, but we're still having those problems that are happening due to some of the rains that are still persisting across the city of Johannesburg, and we're expecting this to continue at least into the new year. But we are ready as City Power in terms of the resources and in terms of the planning that we've put on the table.